Okay, welcome everybody to today's cost talk. We're going to be talking about using product costing to guide key business decisions. And I want to introduce everybody to Paul Nawaka. Really happy to have him on our cost talk today. And I'm going to give him a couple of seconds to introduce himself. Paul, welcome.
Thanks, Adrian. My name is Paul Nawaka. I've been with 3C Software over 20 years, and my experience ranges from protein to heavy metals to semiconductors or contract manufacturing, right? The greatest thing about our job is wandering through all of these facilities and seeing all of these different technologies in different operational places that the software is being used. In my free time, I have 2 kids, and so I'm up to my eyeballs in soccer and soccer. So we stay pretty busy with that. So thanks, Adrian.
Yeah, that's awesome. Welcome, Paul, and definitely we can talk soccer all day. So my name is Adrian Ruchowski. I'm the sales and solution leader at 3C Software. Been doing costing for over 15 years. So hopefully, if you nothing take away from today, is just know that Paul and myself are very passionate about costing, right? So let's get started, Paul. First question is, how do you find product costing? So from over 20 years, from a consulting point of view or from a customer point of view, when you hear the word product costing, what are some of the components that define and make up product costing? And what have you seen out there in your multiple industries of experience?
So the initial response is, what kind of product costing do you want to do? Or what are we looking for? It can range from standard costing to actual costing. Very oftentimes, companies that gravitate towards one type of costing typically then want to come back and pull a variance on it, right? So if you know what your actuals are and you can figure out your standards, you can kind of get some measure of how you're doing. There are some industries that standard cost doesn't mean standard cost. Right? It's standard cost with a wink or standard cost with a nudge. We've been in a number of protein industries where, yeah, they want standard cost, but their meat price changes daily. By definition of standard cost, that's no longer standard cost. And so we do get into a mix of the two. And at the end of the day, we do lean on the customer to really define what they call standard cost or actual or profit cost, if that makes sense.
No, that makes great sense. And you brought up a good point of standard cost and not just standard cost anymore, right? When living and operating in this very dynamic marketplace as we live in today, what I have seen in my experience, just calculating standard cost once a year is not good enough anymore, right? It's expected to almost have this current standard at every month or any moment with given set of assumptions.
Hey, absolutely. I can think back, and if you go 15 years back, 18 years back, we were developing standard cost models, and in the Excel world prior to where we are, it's difficult. It's difficult to change the standards. And so they say, we don't want to change standards. We're not changing standards. We're not changing standards. So we developed models because the standards weren't going to get changed very often. Once they realized within the flexibility of the software that they could change, say, a cotton price, or they could change a commodity price and re-roll their costs, we ended up in this kind of hybrid kludgy world of take a whole copy of the model, call it March of 2014, and then take a copy of it, call it June of 2014. And the huge difference between the two is just a single commodity cost. Change the cost of cotton, change the cost of pulp, right? And you have a completely new model and it does what they want. It's far easier than the Excel world, but you end up with lots and lots of models. And so over the years, we've become better in tune to ask better questions and really ask those questions and really ask those questions. So we do end up with one model that has quarters in it or months in it or years in it. And so the footprint is a little bigger, but the manageability is a little easier for the end user.
Right. No, that absolutely makes great sense. And costing is obviously the foundation of a lot of things in the finance departments, right? But I want to lead us to our next topic, which is the costing and pricing aspect. And when you think about what we just talked about, of costing being really the platform or the foundation of calculating your cost, knowing exactly what is the cost of the product that I manufacture, and then the next step is being given to what kind of business environment I live in, be it a very custom engineer to order approach, be it a volume-based make for stock business environment. But what kind of role does costing play in each of these business environments? And then what kind of pricing decisions are companies that you have worked with been able to do with in these business environments?
So I look at the two spectrums we have, and I can think about our kind of more traditional product costing customers who bought in on the product costing, and they're strong and they've got really good models to do some really detailed product costing. And then we've had those same customers say, we need a better handle on quoting. We need a better handle on estimating. We need a better handle on giving our quoting people the tools they need to be able to make better decisions, right? You think about a contract that gets put into place that's 2 or 3 or 4 years long, and if it's got a bad number in it, you've got to support that contract for the next 4 years, whether it's profitable or not to you. So on that right-hand side of the screen, we do have customers that really are hesitant to share costing. One of the words we use is silos, right? How big is your silo? We have customers that don't want to share the costing information with the quoting people or the estimating people. And then we also have, if you jump to the other side, we have those estimating people that are generating their own costs. And it's funny because once they generate that cost and they get that deal, they throw it over to the finance people, and finance look at it and go, that's not a good number. How did they get those numbers, So
right.
Both ends of the spectrum from a process standpoint, from pricing,
Right. What about the have you worked with companies that used to be a make for stock shop and then kind of had to transition based on market customer requirement to more of an engineer to order specialized kind of environment? And if so, did their costing have to change? Did they do it more frequently? Right? Have you seen any of that?
Hey, so with the customers that are in that make to stock order, there are several that kind of in my mind would like to get into that engineered order and it's not necessarily by design. It's because they have to. It's their customer is asking for more, and their customers are asking for better. And so they are finding that they have difficulties getting into that more flexible, more reactive type of environment. But we have environments where Impact is the tool for both of them, right? You develop a standard, you develop a costing model, and then you have just a footprint in that says, how can I engineer this order? How can I cost this order? How can I do this on a one-off smaller scale as opposed to this monthly close the books book the inventory evaluations, book cost of goods sold, and get those things into the general ledger.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, you bring a good point, right? It's definitely a market, or sometimes even a end consumer requirement why people have to change their approach, right? I remember going to a coffee shop, ordering a coffee. Okay, you get a coffee, right? And yesterday, my wife asked me to drive by Starbucks, and I said, well, what would you like? And she said, I want a cloud macchiato without caramel drizzle, but with more ice, or with extra ice. Like,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this is has changed the business requirement and the consumer behavior completely, which forces now people to become this different business environment, or more dynamic and switching between these two, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and it's the same with, customers we have for, packaging requirements. Every one of their customers is special. They want an extra wrapper. They want it to be, they want some special print and logos on that wrappers, right? I mean, you name it. Everything is very, very custom, right? So it's interesting. And, another comment that for what you said is, I really find it interesting that we see companies all day that will spend millions and millions on these big ERP and transactional systems. But when it comes to the decision of, hey, should we take on this business for the next 3, 4, 5 years? Guess where they do it? They do it in a $19.99 subscription per month called Microsoft Excel.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's something fundamentally wrong with that approach, right? Why not have a system that facilitates it and helps you make more consistent and accurate decisions around pricing and costing, right?
So one of the favorite things I've heard in all my travels is, I want to make better customers. I don't want to turn customers away. And so they're looking for tools to be able to say, do you want that wrapper? This is the cost of putting that wrapper into play. But if you use this other wrapper, if you use this other package, you have a different value proposition, different cost. And then the customer can make decisions on, is it really that important to get that specialty, that niche, what they're looking for, and they can make some cost decisions, right?
Right.
So.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. Let's move on a little bit. But when we talk about costing and pricing, we have seen even more recently, in the last couple of years, this big trend around, how do we cost new products that we internally innovate and come up based on innovation or market that we see, or how do we quote business to existing customers based on existing products that we produce, right? But obviously there is something to be said around having or costing your products in the same way when you innovate or quote versus doing your standard cost, your actual cost, your dynamic costing, right? And there's a lot of challenges that come with it, because a lot of times these are really completely separate, not just systems, but environments, and also even people who are talking to each other, right? So I want to pick your brain a little bit and ask you to share your experiences. What are some of the challenges to costing when it comes to this new product innovation cycle?
So the thing that jumps out to me today is, what do I do if I don't have a part? What do I do if I don't have it's not on a system somewhere, right? And so, again, go into those big MRP systems, big MRP shops, and we're doing product costing for them. We inherit structure, we inherit rules, we inherit part numbers and all those things. And when a part number doesn't exist, there's a thread and a process that they go through to go find a part number. When you're on the other side of the spectrum, those guys need to calculate cost when there is no cost. They need to calculate a part number when there is no part number. They need a price when there is no price. And so you if you're in that world of every or that every I must have a dot, every T must have a cross. Then you switch over and you're like, just give me something. I need a cost. I need an estimate. And so the process begins with wider variations in price. But as we start the costing process, as we start the quoting process, and they put a price in, then get a better price, then get a better price. They get an idea on volume. If this is going to be 100,000 annual units as opposed to 10,000 annual units, their prices change. They can get more price flexibility with more insight into what they're going to buy. And at that point in time, then your estimate, your quote, your pricing kind of tightens up and converges on a more constant value, right? And it's just one material, and that's one material in a bill of materials of 1,000, right? So then you have all these variations going back and forth, and it allows them to have a rigorous system for them to work the list, work the materials list, work the labor list, work the engineering, work the labor time, right? Just work the list and have as flexible as we want to be, have a little more rigor and control over what the environment they're trying to work in. I think that's the biggest.
Now, one example that you and I talked about the other day was, throughout this process of developing, engineering, testing, releasing a product. I mean, there's a lot of stages that it goes through, but it almost in every company has not much to do with the finance folks, right? However, still throughout this process and cycle, you need to have the ability to, have multiple versions for multiple stages of this product evolution and be able to compare each other, right? So what happened when I first started with this napkin approach, this was my version 1. When I then refined it a little bit and found my suppliers, there's my version 2. And really always have these version comparison, or what we call a cost walk, to then create a story around the evolution of this product.
Hey, and that's really that's a good word, the story, right? Tell me why. Everybody wants to know why. Tell me why. I have a value. Tell me why it's this value. Tell me how we got there. And the word you use, the cost walk, and the story, this value change, we got a better price on this. We have the ability to capture all of those changes, any of those variables that change, if they're substantial enough or if they're insubstantial, we can change, or we can capture those values, so that at the end of the day, once we get to an agreed upon price, an agreed upon quote, an agreed upon opportunity, we can also look back and say, this is how we got here. These are the variables that change. This is why we're where we are. And that's right. Another good point about the development cycle. Yes.
Yeah. And then, there's we're also seeing with our customers that, be it through acquisitions or be it through, market diversity or market presence, there's more and more companies that have diverse products that they manufacture. They might be more heavy in some products might be more heavy in using electricity, some might be more heavy in using natural gas, etc. But seeing all this in this costing environment makes it very important to break out, right? And then obviously the last bullet we see here, the collaboration between teams and systems, which, as we talked about, there's a lot of teams and a lot of different departments that are involved in this product evolution part, but there's also a lot of systems, right? There's PLM systems, there's purchasing systems, there's ERP systems, there's BI systems, etc. So, and it almost becomes that there needs to be a platform that creates a common numerator, a common ground for everybody,
right?
And brings it all together for a common view, right? That is this so everybody can speak the same language.
Yeah.
Right.
So speaking towards that, both teams and systems. You know, when we're in a project, we typically find ourselves that we are the redheaded stepchild of data. We want anybody's data. We'll do anything we can to get anybody's data. So we'll collaborate with systems. We'll pull whatever they can get, even the PLM, GL, PLM, or product lifecycle. Any of those systems that we can grab information from, we absolutely want it. And then it's left up to the whatever team is using it, whether it's the finance team, whether it's the costing team, whether it's the quoting team, to backfill what they need to be successful, right? Because what is 100% good enough for operations may not be 100% good enough for the costing or the finance people. So we do the best we can, we take what we want, and then we become, and I still believe this, we become more cognizant of the people downstream from us, right? We take what we can, but then we do a very good job of looking downstream and going, hey, what else do you need, right? And speaking of teams, Adrian, this is something that has just, with this quoting world, it's really what hat are you wearing today, right? We have an application that the materials or purchasing folks are going to use it, and they're going to use it to pull the materials that need prices so that they can go to the street and get materials prices, right? But then you've also got, and we've always catered to the IEs, the industrial engineers, who are going to get us production times in those big standard cost, big models. Now we're still working with those IEs, but now they have a footprint into the system to get their standard allowable minutes in, to get their throughputs, to get their yields in. And so depending on the hat, within the same company, within the same model, you could have 4 or 5 or 6 different people coming in, collaborating, wearing a different hat. The engineers get a different form, the engineers get a different footprint, the engineers get a different way in than, say, your executives, right? Who are just coming in to say, what's it going to cost? What's our margins? What are our values? Are we going to make money? We're not going to make money. And so they get a different footprint. And so from a collaboration standpoint with our teams, we do have, even today, we have a wide variety of teams coming into the system, even beyond just the different disparate systems that we pull information from.
Right. No, that's a great point. All right, let's talk about the last topic for today, the role of costing and the product and customer profitability. So obviously when people hear the word profitability, there's so many things you can think about and talk about, right? But I want to talk about and get your views and your experience on how finance and operation leaders are using costing information in the areas of aligning business goals, aligning their customers, aligning their forecasting and inventory aspects of their business, but also, and from my point of view, one of the most valuable parts of them is using costing information then to create this very dynamic business scenarios of not just looking backwards, but looking backwards for intelligence and then taking it and predicting and simulating certain business environment changes and looking forward and what does that mean for my business?
Right. Hey, so as I look at this slide and you know, I prepped and we talked about this and I'm thinking about it, and as I look at it today, I have actually completely different new ideas about what we're talking about, right? And I think about jumping to the middle one. We have customers that hey, that'll take a sales forecast, or they'll take the planned shipments, and they'll take that shipment and those quantities and those volumes, and they'll blow them across 4 different layers of plants to give a budget, right? So if this is what we expect to sell next year, they'll forecast out down at the direct labor, variable overhead, fixed overhead, depreciation, consumables, down at that level, to be able to at least give their plants the beginning of a budget to say, this is what we're going to do. This is the numbers you start with. Now go from there, right? So as opposed to just kind of pulling together some random values and looking at every layer and trying to piece together all of the volumes to then budget, they'll take the plant sales and blow it down to the individual component level at across all their plants. So it's really fascinating some of the things we can do with what we're generating out of our models, right?
Right.
If we see, I shouldn't have jumped. I jumped out of order. Now I'm all out of sorts, you know. Hey, so for runs and for scenarios and for performance metrics, right? When we start talking about that, I think the world just gets excited. They get excited to take a snapshot and look at it differently. And I know for years we used to say, hey, your what if is going to be just a copy of the whole entire model. And so you take this whole entire model with however many SKUs or however many objects you have in it, we pull it across, we make a copy, and we say, do whatever you want with no intelligence, right? No intelligence layer on that model. And so, you know, these days we've just gotten more elegant in terms of these scenarios we can run and the way to evaluate some of the performance metrics by changing some scenarios, by having values inside that we get better results out of the system, even though we never use some of the results, right? You may have 5 or 6 or 7 different scenarios, right? In which case you're just trying to better yourself to answer that question for the customer, not our customers,
right,
but customers, you know?
Yeah, no, that makes good sense. And, you know, having valuable and good metrics in place makes it, gives you this intelligence in your business where you can compare similar customers with each other, see is something trending out of whack, where is it trending out of whack? Is it because of, you know, the freight? Is it because of the transformation cost? Is it because of the sales rebates, whatever we're giving at this period of time, right? But having this intelligence in place, it's a very, very important aspect. I appreciate that insight. And that brings us to our end of today's cost talk. Paul, thank you very much for joining us today. Really, really great insight. And yeah, for everybody out there, I really thank you guys for joining us today. Contact us, email Paul, email me, and let's talk cost. All right, we'll see you guys next week. Bye.